Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 33, brought to you by the one and only Black Belt Magazine, the world's leading magazine of martial arts. And today I am extremely excited to bring you guys a very exciting episode. We have the two champions of the virtual fight tour. There were 4 champions total, but the last 2 fights featured an extremely exciting match between Ryan George and Kevin Walker that Kevin Walker would come out victorious in, and we have him here today with us. And then we also have, as you guys hear, a plane flying overhead. We also have Bailey Murphy here with us, who won his match over Tyreek Saint in this inaugural event of the virtual fight tour, which is the first event of its kind. It was a pay-per-view style point fighting event promoted by Jesse Ray. We hope to see more of this in the future. But for today, we're just excited to get into some really exciting topics with Kevin Walker and Bailey Murphy. Let's go ahead and have you guys introduce yourselves, maybe tell a little bit of your martial arts story for our audience here on Black Belt Magazine. Bailey, we'll start with you.
All right, so my name is Bailey Murphy. I'm from Hamden, Connecticut. I started martial arts when I was 5 years old. I started training in Taekwondo. I competed in my first tournament when I was around the age of 7, and I was competing in the Crane League. It's a league in New England, a little local league. So I started off doing that, and for a while there were Crane and NASCA tournaments that were connected, such as Ocean State, New England Open, and at the time Twin Towers. So I started competing. Those are the first kind of NASCA tournaments that I ever did. And then after that, as I progressed and it got better, I continued to seek out for more challenges. And that's where the most talented fighters were. So I started competing NASCA when I was about 9 or 10, really heavily. And ever since then, I've just been addicted. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. And then Kevin, go ahead.
Nice. I started training in 1998. I was 4 years old. My mom wanted me to get involved with positive male role models because my father had passed away. So I went and tried a class, and I liked it, and the rest was history. So shortly after, I began competing. So my first tournament, I was probably 5 years old, and that's all I've been doing for the last 22 years, just traveling, training, and competing.
That's awesome. I think that that's one thing that our audience will appreciate is that both of you are extremely active competitors. I know, Kevin, I'm from the Southeast, and you've been competing around the Southeast for a really long time, hitting up almost every regional tournament, taking the grands almost every time you show up. And then Bailey, obviously, you're extremely active both on NASCA and on WACO, going to Europe and competing, things like that. And Kevin, I know you've got experience competing there as well. So that's one thing that I really want our audience to appreciate, because not all of our audience is a point fighting audience. It's all martial artists. One thing that's really impressive about these guys is that these guys are in the ring almost every weekend during normal times when there's not a pandemic or anything like that. And they're putting in that work, and they're very, very active in the sport. Now, because there's this pandemic, it leads to some creative types of martial arts of events coming up. And one of those has been the virtual fight tour that we've been talking about from Jesse Ray. Both of you guys competed and had wins in this. So maybe we'll start with Bailey. Any just kind of overall thoughts, reactions to competing in that format?
I thought it was just a great opportunity to be back in that competitive atmosphere. You know, I liked it. Of course, I'd rather have a whole bunch of other people there, and like, cause I kind of feed off of the crowd. Like, if I do something fancy or nice, I like the oohs and ahs. So as like, I'm an entertainer, I feel like, so I kind of feed off of that energy and attention when I'm at a tournament. Mm-hmm. So that's something that was obviously missed, but I'm just happy to be back in that competitive atmosphere. Like I said, to feel kind of nervous before my fight, all of it, because I love every aspect of it. So I mean, it was cool that Jesse Ray was able to bring this all together, and it was a job well done.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kevin?
Yeah, so for me, it was just an honor and a privilege just to be a part of something like this, and especially since nothing has been going on. And the last time I really wore gear for a reason was in Ireland, and that was so many moons ago. So it was just awesome to get back going, and for this to be the first event of its kind, and then to fight an awesome fighter, to be on an awesome card, and then to somehow come away with a dub, like, it's an awesome feeling. So yeah, it was just a pleasure to get in there and mix around. But like Bailey said, like, I'm definitely an entertainer. So being out there with nobody, with no one watching was really hard. But I think I did everything that I planned as far as treating it like a training match. As you can see, just coming out during the first round, it was just okay, seeing what was going to happen, and then making adjustments and being competitive and trying to pull out a close match. So yeah, it was really fun.
And Kevin, we're going to get into the details of your fight here in just a moment. But one more question for the both of you before we do that. What's the difference in preparation? Because when you're preparing for a tournament, you know that you're going through a bracket of different fighters. You've got to prepare for a variety of different skill sets, whereas this is a set match. You know who you're going to fight. It's one fight. The fight itself is the 3 rounds instead of the 2 that you would fight in grands or 1 in your divisions, right? So talk about just the difference in preparing for an event like this.
Yeah. So the difference in preparing for an event like this is really just focusing and keying in on one person's skill set, like you just said. So I mean, as a lot of people know, Tyreek and I have been fighting one another for a long time, so I'm very familiar with his style and the things that he does. So it's just really important for me to key in on all those little habits and major things that he does when he fights that make him successful and also make him not so successful. So I was able to. It was good to be able to really pay attention to both of those. So I watched a lot of film, watched some of our old fights, some of his fights that he had at Irish Open. Is really paying attention to a lot of the stuff that he does when he is fighting.
Very cool. And Kev?
Yeah, for me, it was kind of similar, but I had a bit of a different approach. Because we're focusing on that one fighter, I did not want to really focus on Ryan because that would just make me super anxious about the match. So during my prep time, I was just like watching and breaking down a lot of film of myself because I knew we had so much time off and all the things that I've been working on might look and feel different to somebody else than what I had done in the past. So my main focus was just sharpening what I had and bringing that to the table. And that was my approach. I didn't start to watch any film. I watched like the last 3 fights I had with Ryan, minus the very last fight, like the night before. And yeah, that's just because I did not want to be anxious because Ryan's such a good fighter and we fight all the time. So I just wanted to focus on trying to try something different. And because the match was so close, I didn't get a chance to do much of what I had. So.
Right. That's understood. I think it's really cool how we see 2 great fighters here, of course, and then kind of different mentalities. Bailey studying more of Tyreek's tendencies, even though they fought many, many times. Kevin, on the other hand, has fought Ryan very many times, but he wanted to focus more on kind of his own game and figuring out how to avoid some of the mistakes he's made in the past, things like that. So, Kev, I want to go ahead and dive into your fight a little bit. You got out to an early 3-0 deficit, but I think that one thing that you kind of have a reputation of is sometimes you do have a slower start in your fights, and you typically always come back and are able to take those victories, sometimes by a more significant margin than you were ever down. So talk about your mindset. Is that something that you plan, or do you like to just kind of take your time and feel out a fight, and then once you feel out a fight, or you feel like you have an advantage later in the fight? What's your mentality there?
Definitely not. That's not a reputation I want to have. It's not fun. I don't know why I like to make things harder. It just happens that way sometimes. But I think that's a testament to my patience because I've experienced so many things. I've pretty much experienced almost anything that could happen in a match so many times over. So I'm not super aggressive. So I'm ready to just kind of let the match come to me and fill it out. So it just so happened that Ryan was ready to go, and he got a couple really quick, easy points. And I pride myself on being a good defensive fighter and not giving up many points. So I wanted that to be a low-scoring matchup. So 3 points right off the bat let me know, okay, it's time to lock in. But at the same time, I have to score my points too. So I didn't want to rush into anything in that first round. So I just kind of took my time. And I saw what I wanted, but I didn't want to go to the well too often, too early. So I wanted Ryan to kind of get comfortable in what he was doing to get him to relax. And then as soon as I would see the adjustments that I wanted, I would take it. So just ending the round with those 2 points, it gave me confidence going to the second round. I even said something into the camera. I looked at the score. I was like, okay, 5-2, we're good. Here we go. So, yeah, it was just an adjustment game from there, and then it was going to be an endurance battle. I already knew. So I just wanted to get it close, maybe get a lead, and it happened in the second round. So I was pretty comfortable. But my fight plan going into it, I wanted to win every round by at least 2 points so that I would be up by a minimum of 4 points going into the last round. So just in a perfect world, I saw myself being up 6-7 points going into the third round, but I was clinging to a close one. So it was different.
And I want to correct myself there at the beginning. I didn't mean to say that you have a reputation of being down. You have a reputation of when you are down, you typically come back. So I wanted to clarify that real quick. Kevin's a great fighter. His reputation is not for being down in his matches. So I wanted to clarify that. And then you talked about kind of going into the second round and then kind of how the lead shifted. And I think that a big momentum moment there, I forget if it was late round 2 or early round 3, you had the beautiful axe kick that landed, gave you a 2-point lead. A lot of people were really impressed in the comments that I saw. The fact that you were able that late in the fight to still have the energy to get the leg up and execute that axe kick. Ryan responded with, a couple of punches in a row, seemed to be pretty hard punches taking you out of the ring. That led to an injury timeout, and I think that a lot of people may have been confused as to what was going on there. So take us through those 2 exchanges, and then what was the injury, what was going on?
All right, man, everything was a blur, but definitely from hearing that account and so many accounts from everybody else that I've talked to that have seen it, and just from my own remembering that part, I remember just throwing a kick. I saw it was there. I whiffed a couple times in the match, and this was the one I was like, okay, I need this. So I really kind of committed a lot more to this one and just really gave it my shot. And had I missed the kick, I was going to be there for the follow-up. So I was pretty confident in the actions there. So we got the judges to call the 2, and I think that, somehow got the lead. And, somehow, when you're down a lot and you get the lead, you tend to get comfortable. And rather than trying to put my foot on his neck, I relaxed a bit, and he was able to get off. And when he got off, he got a nice 3-point, 3-point shot, right? And then got a little stop, and then I felt a couple more, and I was like, okay, cool. I remember the rules were very strict on the late hitting, so I'm going to milk this for everything that I can. But at the same time, like, I was really dazed. Like, he had me with a couple good shots, and I needed a second to calculate myself. I had to kind of realize where I was. I shouldn't probably be saying that, but yeah, had to lock back in. And, thankful Dr. Juan was there. He checked me out. Everything was good. So we got back in and got to work.
Absolutely. And I think that makes it even a little bit more impressive that you were able to come back and have as strong of a third round and then the couple of overtimes that you did have, especially finding out that you were dazed. Because watching it on camera, it was hard to tell because that clash happened kind of out of frame, and we didn't know if maybe did you roll your ankle, did you go down hard and hurt your arm or something, or were you really dazed? It was kind of hard to tell what was going on, and that's something that I was actually very impressed with the camera work on this kind of first-time production, multiple different angles. That was one of the few things that we missed in watching these fights, and I'm sure that Jesse Ray will be improving those efforts as these fights continue because that's what he always does. He always comes out with something bigger and better from his seminars to his events and everything else. So now I want to shift going on into the overtime because there was another kind of bizarre series of events that happened leading to the double overtime, right? You were up 2. It seemed like, Ryan was throwing one of those like desperation, didn't really think it was going to hit, but it'd be cool if it did, cartwheel kicks. You stepped back out of the ring, and a couple of things happened at that point. It's a clock stoppage. You get a penalty point that goes to Ryan, and that gave him the opportunity to try to tie up the match. So when you stepped out of the ring, did you think time had already expired? Did you know that Ryan was just kind of throwing the cartwheel kick because he thought it was over 2? What's going through your mind at that point? And kind of explain what happened there because that was a wild finish.
Okay, so disclaimer, as far as the rules, we were pretty much crystal clear. We knew if you were running out to avoid the fight, that was going to be a point the other way. As far as late clock situations, I didn't hear anything about adding time on the clock. I didn't know nothing about that. I didn't know anything about that. So when it happened, I knew Ryan was just throwing it out of desperation, but I actually didn't realize this until a friend who doesn't even do karate told me, who watched the fight. He said, yo, you actually kicked him. And I went back and kind of looked at the clip, and I was like, yeah, I definitely side kicked this guy, and then went out the ring. So, but because he was throwing a cartwheel, I didn't want to, hit him, so I just touched him, and then I saw his legs coming, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to get hit by this or let it come even closer. So I just went out of the ring, and I figured if anything, they'd give him a point, and that would be the match because when he threw the cartwheel kick, it was 2 seconds left on the clock. Mm-hmm. So they gave him the point, but then they also added time on the clock. So, we're at the dojo, so I didn't say anything. I was like, let's get it, and that's off the road.
Mhm. And I think that that's one of the things about point fighting is that those things happen, right? One thing that I guess a lot of people can criticize point fighting about is that the late clock situations are sometimes hard to control because you're dependent on a lot of different people to react. You've got to have either the center ref sees the fact that time has expired or the scorekeeper yells out or throws something in the ring to say that time has expired. And there's often 1 or 2 seconds after the time is really up that fighting is still going on just because of how much has to happen there. And that's something that as our sport continues to get more and more professional, which I feel like all of the event promoters are doing a much better job of, especially in the past few years, maybe the end of clock situations and putting a quicker stop to fights so that fights end when the time expires, maybe that's something that we'll see more of in the future. But in that case, you can make the argument because the cartwheel kick happened at 2 seconds left. Maybe it's fair to add the 2 seconds. People can go back and forth about that all day. Kind of depends on who your fighter was in the fight, right?
Also not to be a stickler on the rules, but also, the 2 hands down was, supposed to be a point the other way as well. So I thought like once everybody had a break to kind of think about things, they would have just had everything negate itself. But, once again, we're in the fight, and it was such a good fight. I already knew the fans wanted to see more anyway. So let's just let it rock.
Right, absolutely. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about that double overtime. So another really interesting rule that was implemented here was the overtime rules, in which the fighters had the option to agree on a decision for what would happen for the overtime, whether it be a sudden death, next point wins, or whether there'd be an additional 1-minute round. My understanding is that Ryan won the coin toss, deferred to you, and then you elected for the 1-minute round. First thing, were you surprised that he would defer in that situation? Because if I was a fighter, I would assume that I would want to be able to make that decision. So the deferring there is interesting. And then why did you select the 1-minute round?
Yeah, so once again, everything was a blur, but I do remember that specifically. So what really happened was I had the first choice. And when James came over to ask me what I wanted to do, I was trying to catch my breath and say 1 minute, but he was so ready to get it going, he left for me and started going to Ryan. So rather than yelling out 1 minute, I was just like 1 minute. So when he talked to Ryan, I guess Ryan said whatever he said, and he came back to me and I said 1 minute. So they went coin toss. And so when they said the toss, they said my side would be 1 minute, his side would be next point wins. But when he won the toss, they was like, hey, he chooses. So I was like, okay, 1 minute, because I'm not letting this close match be decided by the next point win. Especially with some of the calls that were being called, I was not comfortable with that because there was a couple exchanges where I threw step-ins where I thought I was definitely going to get a point where none of the judges even moved. So I was like, yeah, we definitely need a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm on the podcast.
Oh, my bad. I was about to go hit 5 points.
So, all right. Yeah, sorry, my roommate.
Things happen. All good. Keep going.
All right. But, yeah, man, kind of lost my train of thought there. But when it happened, that was cool. Yeah.
Right. So I guess from my perspective, if I was fighting, I feel like you felt, right? If you have the option to have the extra minute, I would almost always want the extra minute so that the fight is decided by multiple calls instead of just one call. I want to shift to Bailey here. If you were to be put in that situation, what would your strategy be? Would you want the sudden death, just thinking you can get it, or would you want the 1 minute as well?
No, I think I would go for 1 minute as well, because I just like if it's such a close match like that. Like Kevin said, I don't want it to be decided on the next point, especially when some of the whole event was great, but some of the judges didn't move as much as I probably would have liked. So, and I mean, that's hard because we were also in an octagon. It wasn't like a ring. So if moving could have affected the fight more if they got in our way, stuff like that. But yeah, I think I would have definitely wanted a 1 minute, 1 minute on the clock instead of the next point wins, especially when Tyreek and I were so fast. So that could really go either way.
Right. Absolutely. And so, Kevin, thank you for the breakdown on your fight. We're going to come back to some more questions for you in a minute, but Bailey's been quiet for a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and shift to Bailey now. First things first, I know that as a fan watching the Kevin and Ryan fight, that was incredible. Forget, a questionable call here or some rule things there. Forget all of that drama. That was just an incredible fight to watch. Were you watching the fight, or were you kind of in the zone focusing on getting ready for yours?
I watched the first round and maybe half of the second round. After that, I kind of went to my corner, started bouncing around, warming up, a little more before the fight. Because I mean, for the most part, I was just sitting around a lot of the time because there's basically 9 rounds. Well, with Kevin, there's 10 rounds and a double overtime before me. So I was just sitting around, and plus the interviews and stuff like that. So there's a lot of time I was just sitting there. So after about halfway through Kevin's round, I said, okay, now I have to focus on myself and get myself prepared. So.
Absolutely. And actually, I want to go off script here a little bit because that brings up an interesting question. I know that sometimes, and this is for both of you, sometimes one of the most difficult things about competing in tournaments is the fact that there is a lot of warm up and get cold again, warm up and get cold again. Division's ready, no, it's not. Fighters ready, no, they're not. So how do you, as a competitor, maybe giving advice to other competitors, younger competitors coming up, how do you manage that as far as both your mental state and being mentally ready to fight, as well as just staying warmed up and staying loose when there can be so many variations in the timing? Bailey and then Kevin.
It's tricky because as a lot of people know, I run track, so something that people say in track, like once you commit to warming up, you gotta stay warm. You can't warm up then get cold, then you have to go through that whole process again. So sometimes at tournaments it gets tricky and it's annoying because the division will be ready, or they say it'll be ready, and it's not really ready. I think it was at U.S. Open last year that had us doing open weight on a Thursday, or nah, they had us doing open weight Saturday morning, and we got everyone. They said be there at 8. We didn't start until like 11 o'clock. So that puts everyone in a bad position. If you're getting there at 8 a.m., you're waking up early to get there, you're warming up, and then just not to do anything. Warming up for 3 hours that's a long time. You know what I mean? So, I mean, for me, I do always warm up. I just listen to my music, get in my zone. But yeah, it's tricky once like a division is not running on time or you got a long wait in between. So you really just have to try to do your best to find the best time to warm up.
For sure.
I try to warm up about an hour before my division starts.
Right. Absolutely. And same thing for a forms competitor myself. You know, I like to always be there an hour before, and then forms competitors deal with the same thing of warm up, division's not ready, things like that. I think one thing that puts a promoter in a bad position is that often it's not the promoter's fault, right? Yeah. It's often, you know, they have an international team coming in and like they're late. And it's like, well, you can't really tell the team that came all that way that like, oh, too bad you missed. So the promoters have to deal with some really difficult situations there. So I typically err on the side of giving the promoters some slack because sometimes it's just situational and there's nothing you can do about it. But at other times there are things that can be done to make that better. So now, Kev, your thoughts?
For sure, man. That's a tricky subject, and a lot of people have asked me of that in years past. I made that mistake at one of my first national events, aka Grands. When I was a freshman in college, I went and warmed up, and the division didn't start for another 90 minutes, and like I had to re-warm up, and it was so hard, and I had lead legs by the time it was time to fight. So it's one of those things where my groove is, it takes a lot for my warm up. So I try to typically warm up the division before mine. So I usually try to just chill out. I like to lay down, maybe even go to sleep until that very moment. And then that's when I'll get active. And then we get hyperactive, got to really warm up, put on your gear, and then you're ready to go. And by the time I'm in the ring, I've broken a pretty good sweat.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's some great advice for any younger competitors that may be watching this, wondering, you know, what you're supposed to be doing to warm up. And those are two great athletes' takes on how they handle it. And so now, Bailey, shifting to your fight, I know one thing that a lot of people have been talking about is that you and Tyreek in this particular fight tended to stay in the pocket a lot of exchanging blitzes, not a whole lot of lateral motion. But that fight was also held in a cage. So we were talking about Kevin and Ryan's fight. They were in a ring in a martial arts school, so they were able to move freely as much as they wanted to. But with you and Tyreek, you were in a cage, and so your motion was a little bit restricted in that regard. Was it more on your strategy that you were trying to stay on that straight line and just trying to beat him with a faster blitz, or was that something that was kind of required of being limited by the cage?
So the cage definitely felt a little different. It's not something I'm used to, so I guess that played into part. But if you watch the first round, Tyreek and I did a lot of moving during the first round. So the first round was a very active round. I think the score at the end of the first was 8-6. There's a lot more angles and stuff like that being used in the first round. In the first round,
Bailey, can I stop you for 1 second there real quick? I
No
apologize.
problem.
Mr. Dillard, come on. Can you actually come out here real quick? So this is actually a really special treat for anybody that's tuning in. So this is the my podcast that we do for Black Belt Magazine.
Oh, cool.
This is CEO and founder of Century, Master Mike Dillard.
Hi there.
So do you need the gym? Because if we need to take the podcast mobile, we can.
We had class at 12:30.
We can go on the move
And we can probably move those guys at 1.
if that works for you. Otherwise, we can move. It's all good.
Let me go ask them.
Yes, sir.
Nice to meet you guys.
Come back and let me know.
All right, bye.
So that's a really special treat. That was unexpected. So yeah, we might be on the move here in a minute. He'll come back out and let me know. They're actually in the process of making a studio for the podcast so that it has its own home and we're not in a dojo like this right now. But either way, really cool experience right there to get to see Master Dillard. But anyway, Bailey, go ahead and continue. Sorry about that.
It was just a little different feel to be in the octagon, like I was saying. And I feel like Tyreek and I, we did move a lot during the first round. Which kind of led to us being tired. We used a lot of energy. I mean, the ring rust. I haven't been in the ring since the end of February. Neither has he. So we were so active in the first round. It kind of led to us just trading blitzes, and then I kind of started just to pick up on his little tendencies where he would fake and wouldn't do anything. So it led to me just going while he was faking.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So now going back over my notes here real quick. One thing that I do want to talk about, you and Tyreek have had a friendly rivalry for a little while now. And even on Instagram earlier today, I noticed that you posted and tagged Tyreek in a little story about LeBron and Melo. And so maybe that's in basketball, transferring that over into sport karate, maybe that's the type of status that you guys ultimately want to achieve. And we're going to get into kind of where you see yourself in the rankings of sport karate here in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk just a little bit about your relationship with Tyreek and that rivalry, and maybe just take us back to how that started. And again, it is a friendly rivalry, so talk about that aspect as well.
So the first time Tyreek and I fought was in my hometown in 2014 at the Nutmeg Nationals. My instructor hosted the tournament. My team hosted the tournament. That was the first time I ever saw Tyreek. I mean, I knew Troy. Troy and I had competed in the Model Challenge 2 times with Gina Thornton at Norman Open. So Troy brought Tyreek to my tournament in Nutmeg State Nationals in 2014, and we fought for the first time. I beat him by 2. And after the tournament, I said, hey, good fight. And then he said, Tyreek's first words to me were, I can beat you. So I said, good fight to him. And he said, I can beat you. 2 weeks later, I ended up going to a tournament in New York, and he beat me by 5. So, I mean, after that, I mean, he had my respect. He said he was going to do something, and he did it, right? And then we fought again at K-Talk in 2014, and I beat him. And then for a while, he was just continuing to push me as a competitor, and I mean, we just became friends from it, you know. I mean, we were just cool with each other, and still to this day, like when we fight, as you guys saw, I mean, when we fight. Like we're not, like you can't tell that we're friends in the ring, you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
Tyreek and Kevin was there too. They came up to my school in January, and Tyreek and I were going rounds, like, and you wouldn't be able to tell that we were friends. Because when we're fighting, that's not the atmosphere we're in. We're not friends during that moment, you know what I mean? But like, I call Tyreek every day. We talk on the phone, like we'll play video games together. So we're just cool.
Very cool. And that's one thing that I think is special about sport karate competition is that you get very few heated rivalries in sport karate.
Yeah.
Like I know a lot of my greatest competitors, as I've kind of been going up on the forms and weapons side, have always been some of my best friends because we're always pushing each other and making each other better. So it's cool that you and Tyreek have that kind of relationship. And so now kind of looking ahead to the future, you had some very interesting comments about the future in your post-fight interview that's gotten a lot of buzz on social media. And by the way, I 100% agree with you. To kind of paraphrase you a little bit, you basically, before any questions were asked, you just said, I appreciate what you guys do, but I want to take the opportunity to say a few things. And you mentioned that you were tired of being called the future, you and Tyreek both, that you wanted to be called the present. You've got 8 NASCAR overalls to your name, so you feel that's enough to be considered one of the best fighters right now, not of the future. So maybe just to our audience, go ahead and kind of share those thoughts, and then we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into what you said. But I want to start by just giving you the opportunity to go ahead and explain that a little bit, because I absolutely agree with you. I think that you're right up there, man.
Yeah. So I mean, from the time I was young, I think I've been kind of like advanced and better than a lot of people that are my age. Like I'm only 19. I remember I was 14 years old and I went and fought 16, 17 at Warrior Cup one year. And I won my division and I got protested out of the division and got sent back down to 14, 15. I feel like I've always been ready for more challenges, like 16, 17. Tyreek went up a year earlier than I did. So that kind of left me in a position where I had no challenges my last year, 16, 17. So I mean, like I wasn't hungry anymore. You know what I mean? Like I went to a tournament and kind of felt as if I knew the outcome. I already knew the outcome. Like there, and that may sound cocky, but it got to a point where I really looked for those new challenges and I was ready to move up to adults. So I did end up moving up a year early, and I won my first 2 NASCAR overalls when I was 16. So I mean, for a while, people were saying I was a future, but I felt like I've been a contender since like late 15-year-old, like late in the year of me being 15 and then early 16. I feel like I was clearly a competitor. Like I was a contender for overalls.
Absolutely.
So it kind of bothers me that still now I'm going into my 4th season as an adult next year. Well, I don't really count this season, so my 3rd. And people are still calling me the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that for sure. And it's funny that you say that because I remember when I was a 16, 17-year-old, and the forms and weapons division has always just had different culture in a lot of different ways. But I wanted to move on up to the adult division definitely when I was 16, but that kind of continued over to when I was 17. And they didn't let me. But anyway, so I'm glad that you were able to kind of get in there and get that opportunity early, because I believe that competitors should always be able to challenge themselves. If you want to move up into a division and be able to challenge yourself, I believe that's always the right thing to do. People already do it going from color belt and moving up to black belt. So if you're 17 going to 18, I don't see why you shouldn't be able to do that. So I'm glad that you were able to make it happen. And so now going into kind of the second part of what you were saying, I heard some people thinking that you were taking a shot at Elijah Everill, but I disagree with that. I actually thought it was a compliment. Yeah. You said Elijah's the best in the world right now. He just won the Irish Open, and typically the Irish Open openweight champion is the person who's widely considered to be the best in the world. But what you said was, by 2021, I'm going to have that title. So first thing, I want you to kind of clarify what your intentions were with that, and if it was a compliment or a little bit of a diss to Elijah, because I took it as a compliment towards him. And then also, in your eyes, what do you think you have to do to be able to claim that you are the best fighter in the world?
It definitely wasn't a shot. I have a lot of respect for Elijah. I mean, he's beating me more than I'm beating him, so there's nothing really I could say. It's not even a rivalry. Rivalries go back and forth. So, I mean, I can't say I've gone back and forth with him. He definitely has. Right now, he definitely has a little over on me. But no, it wasn't a diss or anything like that. I have a lot of respect for him. And like I said, 2019, 2020, I do believe he was the best fighter in the world. And in 2021, I just don't want him to continue to be comfortable with that position because I'm hungry.
Absolutely. I think that's a great take, and I love that attitude in a competitor. Now, I do want to shift to Kevin for a moment here because as an all-star, Elijah's a teammate of yours. So I want to know what you think. Obviously, you're one of the top fighters in the world too. So what are your thoughts on that? And then you're somebody who obviously is a little bit older. Oh, I don't want to say you're later in your career because you may fight for another 10 years, right? But where do you kind of see that ranking falling? Where do you put yourself? And then kind of how do you – Go ahead, Kev.
But in all seriousness, no. Like, I actually missed that part of the fight. Like, I was so excited at their finish. We were just talking about the match and how fast it was. Like, I really missed what was going on. I was ready to leave my fight venue, so I went to kind of pack up my gear. But then my phone went off, my All-Stars group chat. And I'm like, oh, what just happened? And somebody was like, Elijah, you caught that? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I need to be tuning in. So I kind of jumped back out into the stream, and I can't wait to watch the rebroadcast because I was kind of loud. And I was like, hey, what did Bailey just say? And then Josh was like, oh. So I was like, oh, I guess they're still talking. So, but as a fighter, that should be your mentality, especially as somebody who has the results that Bailey has. Like, that should be the way you feel. And if you're going to express that, like, as long as your actions are backing that up, I see nothing wrong with that, man. And it definitely wasn't a shot at Elijah. It was a sign of respect, just a sign of facts. This guy's been one of the strongest fighters around the world for the last 2-3 years. And he's rightfully claimed that. And he knows I'm coming for him. He knows Bailey's coming for him. So, it's all good.
That's awesome. That's the competitive spirit. And again, that's one of the things that I love most about this sport is how much mutual respect there is. Sometimes, especially in like the UFC, we see fighters getting disrespectful with one another. In point fighting, you very rarely see that. It happens, but you very rarely see that. It's mostly all respect and all in good sport, which is one thing that I really appreciate about the sport that we compete in and the sport that we love. Last question that I want to give you guys, and again, this is to both of you. Both of you train with some legendary coaches. Bailey, you've always been loyal to Straight Up, still representing Straight Up. You're training with Joe Greenhall, who's widely considered to be one of the best point fighting coaches of all time. And then Kevin, you train under a point fighting legend, Tony Young, as well. So I want to give you both the opportunity to talk about your relationships with your coaches. And I know, Kevin, you also have others outside of Tony Young that have inspired you, from Kodak Ray and a list of people that you've looked up to. But go ahead, Bailey first, and then Kevin, just talking about your relationships with your coaches.
So even before I was on Straight Up, Mr. G really always supported me. Like, if you go on my Facebook and just look at like photos of me, you can see before I even have a Straight Up uniform on, he's always in the background next to my instructor, always giving me advice, always coaching me. Before I was even on the team, I used to go up there pretty often and train with them. So now, after like a couple weeks ago, I started going back up there, and the relationship with just Mr. G and I is really good. He's almost like a friend. Like, he's just a cool dude. Like, we'll go out on his boat and we'll just hang out, but we always train. So we just have a great relationship.
Very cool. And Kev?
Mr. G is awesome. Yeah, so Mr. Young, man, everybody knows how I feel about Mr. Young. I feel like he's the greatest fighter of all time. His resume is, nobody can compare to that. You win your division for 19 years in a row. Like, who does that? So he's taught me everything that I know, but not everything he knows. So he's a whale. So he's constantly giving me information, constantly breaking down my fights, constantly giving me encouragement, and I thank him for that. And so many people that he has trained has poured into me as well. So like I have instructors from all over, but most of them have learned from him. So everything just stems from his knowledge and experience, and I have to attribute a lot of my, if not all of my success to him, and just the mentality that he built for me. Like, a lot of that was just me emulating him, trying to follow in his footsteps. So, yeah.
Very cool. And that's one thing that I've always respected so much when I see it in competitors, especially in point fighters, because I do feel like I mentioned the difference between forms and weapons and point fighting culture. I feel like fighters more often move around different teams than forms and weapons competitors do. And for me, coming up as a competitor, for those of you that don't know, I trained under Lauren Carney, who is the forms and weapons coach of Team Paul Mitchell. I was on her Premier Martial Arts team. I was on her Change the Game team. And I got a bunch of offers from other teams, and never, ever left Change the Game because I knew I was waiting for Paul Mitchell to give me the call, because that is what I wanted my entire career. And so when I see other fighters, Bailey, you and Straight Up, Kevin, you and your loyalty to Tony Young, and then now as an all-star, right? It's one thing I really, really appreciate about fighters is when they have that loyalty and when they stay with somebody for a really long time and they always show respect to those coaches or those role models or what have you. That's just something that I always look up to and admire a lot as a peer, as a competitor, and I try to instill that in a lot of my students as well and all the young martial artists coming up. And so that kind of concludes all the set questions that I had for you guys. But I do want to give you the opportunity, if there's anything else that you want to say, things that you're looking forward to. I know we got Bad Love Atlanta coming up. If you guys will be there, things like that. Any closing comments from either of you?
I'm just really excited to watch all the fights because my fight was at a weird place. I was only able to comfortably watch the first round of the first match, and then I watched like the first 30 seconds of the second round of the second match. And then like I caught Bailey and Tyreek's match, but at the same time I was still trying to catch my breath, still trying to put away my gear, still trying to put and make celebration snaps and Instagram posts. So, you know, I'm excited to watch the rebroadcast. So if you didn't get a chance to watch it, make sure you catch that. So yeah.
Yeah, same. I'm looking. Well, I was just messaging Kevin on Instagram the other day, asking if he had my fight because I'm looking forward to seeing myself. That's something I love to do. Just watch my fight, watch what I did wrong. Like get back to work as soon as the fight is over, see what I did wrong and what I did right. So that's something I'm definitely looking forward to. And a question you asked earlier, I don't think I even answered it. You said where do I rank myself right now in the world? I don't have a specific number, but I will say I think I am a top 5 fighter in the world right now.
Cool. I respect that. Like I said, I mean, I always love somebody with confidence, but also backs that confidence up with performance. And a lot of people don't mention this, especially in sports talk shows and stuff, backs it up with respect. It's okay to claim that you're the best or that you're top 5 or whatever, as long as you show respect to your peers that are up there with you. And you absolutely do that. And that's one thing that I always appreciate about seeing your post on social media and when you do interviews, things of that nature. And by the way, for our audience, these are 2 fighters that I absolutely love watching fight. They've got well-rounded fighting games. They're always doing things that are extremely impressive, from their athleticism to their fight IQ. I mean, both of them always put on a show. So if you're ever coming to a NASCA tournament, or sometimes they're at WACO events, US Open with the ISKA, things of that nature, and other world leagues as well. So definitely make sure that you make it out to one of those World Tour events. And if you hear that Bailey Murphy or Kevin Walker's fighting, make sure you head over to that ring because they always put on a show. So to the 2 of you, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we can get you back on the show again when you collect some more wins, because I know both of you will.
That's it.
Sure.
Absolutely. So thank you everybody that's been tuning in here on Black Belt Magazine. Thank you to Black Belt Magazine for sponsoring and promoting the Jackson Rudolph podcast. Really appreciate the opportunity, and I will see you guys next week with episode 34. This has been episode 33 of the Jackson Rudolph podcast.